Welcome to the Nucleate Podcast. My name is Sam Kessel, and I'll be your host. On this episode, I have a conversation with the CEO of AbSci, Sean McClain. Sean founded AbSci in 2011, initially as a synbio company with the mission of improving biomanufacturing. Since then, AbSci has evolved into a leader in AI drug discovery, leveraging its synbio data generation platform to train and validate cutting-edge generative AI models to design better biologics faster. Using AI, AbSci engineers new medicines with the desired product profile, including binding, potency, manufacturability, and immunogenicity at rapid speed. Embracing the believe in the impossible mantra, Sean is one of the youngest biotech CEO founders to raise over $500 million, and he took AbSci public in mid-2021. Sean studied biochemistry and molecular biology at the University of Arizona. He was a featured science honoree on the 2019 Forbes 30 Under 30 list, named as the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2020 Pacific Northwest Region Award winner, and was selected as a 2021 Endpoints News 20 Under 40 Biopharma Leader, among other awards. Welcome, everyone, to the Nucleate Podcast. My name is Sam Kessel, and I will be your host today. We are very excited to be hosting Sean McClain, the CEO of AbSci. Sean, thank you for joining Nucleate today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam, for having me here.
So, first question is, we'd like to learn more about your background. What were your influences growing up, and what inspired you to eventually pursue a career in biotech?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, I really had a love for math and physics, and it wasn't actually until I got into college that I actually really realized my love for biology. I originally was a mechanical engineering major and ended up taking a biochemistry class, and it was actually right around the time synthetic biology was taking off, and it was this idea of like if you could really start leveraging these engineering principles in biology, you can make a huge impact in how you make medicines, how we design materials, and so it really kind of became this obsession of mine, and that actually kind of stemmed into the founding of AbSci. And if you kind of looked at the history of biotech, it began with Genentech, and Genentech's first product was insulin, and it was really simple. They essentially wanted to recombinantly produce insulin instead of getting it from pig pancreas, and so they ended up recombinantly producing it in a very simple organism, E. coli. And as the industry started to evolve, they started shifting towards antibody-based therapies. And Genentech back in the day actually tried to produce an antibody in E. coli, but it wasn't capable. Traditionally antibodies aren't made in prokaryotic organisms like E. coli. They're made in higher, more complex organisms like mammalian cells. And that kind of really intrigued me of like, well, what if we could actually take these, the foundation of these mammalian cells and what makes them, have the ability to produce antibodies, and re-engineer and rejigger E. coli to produce these antibodies. And one of the big reasons why I was interested in that as well is because like making that pivot from E. coli to mammalian cells, development times increase, the cost increase, and so it's this idea of like, okay, well, we could actually transform biomanufacturing with engineering E. coli and really lower the manufacturing costs and development times, and that was kind of actually the original idea of AbSci, but it all kind of stemmed from that love and obsession of figuring out how to engineer biology in a way to really change healthcare, biomanufacturing, and I could just see all the different various applications that synthetic biology could ultimately be applied to.
That's a very interesting influence, that your foundations as a mechanical engineer influenced how you think about biology. So you probably think about biology very differently than a typical PhD with biochemistry. You probably think of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your foundation in mechanical engineering is very problem solution oriented, and you probably have an ability to think outside of the box in how you're approaching these things. And I'm assuming that's part of what inspired you into AbSci, as well as how you've pivoted along the way. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's figuring out again how we can have this engineering mindset or first principle mindset, and taking that into biology and essentially turning biology into an engineering principle. Because for so long it's been a black box. And I think what is interesting is when we all set out on this SynBio journey, 13, 15 years ago. I think we really did all believe that we were going to figure out how to, turn biology into an engineering principle. But I think we realized that biology was a lot more complex, and the tools that we had, ultimately weren't effective enough to ultimately have the outcomes that we wanted. I mean, we could manipulate things, but there'd still be things when you manipulated a cell, it had some off-target effect that you didn't realize that you weren't able to account for. And again, I think that really goes to that biology complexity. But now what's really interesting is that when you layer in artificial intelligence, generative AI, with scalable wet lab technology, the SynBio technology, now you can actually start to explore that complexity space in a way that you traditionally hadn't been able to before. And you can really kind of start to go now from this paradigm of this trial and error process of drug discovery, where you're searching for a needle in the haystack, to actually now creating the needle, in our case, an antibody. And so it's really this merging of synthetic biology and AI. And ultimately, that's where I believe the success is ultimately going to be, and that's how we're going to usher in personalized medicine in the future. And again, kind of going back to engineering principles, really start to engineer biology the way we want to.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that when you're combining AI and massive data sets with biology, that you can create novel approaches with the antibodies. Perhaps they bind in different ways that you didn't expect. And you can optimize millions of different opportunities. It's a fascinating approach, and the implications are wide ranging. It sounds like even beyond, I mean, AbSci certainly sounds like very interesting what's going on there, but I think you're raising a point that expands to all of biotech, which is AI can have massive implications for drug development holistically.
What 100%. But it all comes back to the data. I think everyone is realizing that we in biology aren't as much compute limited or constrained as some of these large language models like ChatGPT are, where they have huge access to data. If you look at the publicly available data that's out there for biology, it really fails in comparison to what's out there compared to the whole internet. And which really goes to show that if we want to have the outcomes with AI that we want to have, we have to figure out a way to scale biology in a way to get the data to train these models to ultimately have, I think, all of the different various outcomes that one. But I think folks are starting to realize that, and that it's essential to have wet lab technology that can generate novel data, but then also be able to wet lab validate it as well, and see how accurate your models are. And that kind of allows you to rapidly iterate on like what model designs or architectures are best to use, what hyperparameters, what various sets of data. And I think that are going to win in AI drug discovery are going to be those that figure out how to marry scalable wet lab technology with artificial intelligence. And that ultimately is going to be the key to success, and enabling you to truly design biologics at a click of a button.
That is very interesting. One thought on that, when you're talking about marrying scaling up wet lab biology with AI, how do you keep that up? How do you balance all the data that you're collecting with generative AI and all the different parameters of novel antibodies that you're creating with your platform with testing in the wet lab? How do you decide at which points do you take a antibody, for example, that you've developed to a certain stage? At what point do you decide when to select antibodies and then bring them over to the wet lab to begin testing them? Do you ever have the computer models getting ahead of the wet labs, or how do you make sure you balance that in a way that allows you to get the real life data, and not have the computer models go too far in advance?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start out on our internal program for our own pipeline, or let's say for like a partner like Merck or AstraZeneca, what we do is we take the structure of the target, and that can either be a crystal structure, an experimental structure, or it can be a AI predicted structure through AlphaFold. And we then specify to the model what epitope we want an antibody designed towards. And the models then is able to design the CDRs to bind to that particular epitope of interest. And the model will give us tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different CDR designs that we want, that could have the possibility of binding to that particular epitope of interest. And then what we do is we then take those CDRs that the model had generated, and we go to Twist or IDT, get that DNA synthesized, and then we go into the wet lab and validate those and find out which of these actually do indeed have the binding that we're looking for to that particular epitope of interest. Because at this point in time, the model isn't 100% accurate. We still have to have that wet lab validation, but it's good enough to generate hits for us that we can then kind of hone in the different various attributes. And no one's ever been able to truly do that before, have epitope specificity. And we all know that the epitope and how tightly an antibody binds to a target dictates the overall biology. And so now kind of putting my engineer hat back on, that's incredible, because previously you've had phage display immunization campaigns where it's completely random what comes out. You're not able to control how many antibodies you get out to bind to a particular epitope. You can't control the affinity. The mouse gives you what the mouse gives you. And so now you have a way to look at various different epitopes to unlock new novel biology. And then what you can do is once you have those hits, you can then kind of hone in on the other various different attributes. And so this is where we have our AI lead optimization models. Think of this as kind of the local search, and that de novo approach I was just talking about, that's kind of the global search. So you have the global search, you get some binders that bind to the epitope, and then you have that local optimization search that helps you hone in on the other various different attributes that you're looking for, like affinity, developability, looking at can we formulate this appropriately, and ultimately from there we then pick the candidates that we want to move forward into preclinical testing, and so that's kind of how the overall model works. And I think the great thing about all of this again is that even if the model were to hallucinate, we're going to catch that right off the bat, because we have that wet lab. We're able to validate, like, is the model giving us accurate predictions, and we know right away. So there's no point in time where we're taking a molecule into let's say, animal studies, and we have, no idea, whether or not the model gave us what we were looking for.
That makes sense. So you have a certain cadence with which you'll develop the initial set of antibodies that bind to specific targets, bring it over to the wet lab, see which ones actually work the best, and then you modify the antibody so that it has the other features, so you can manufacture it better, so it has the right pharmacokinetics, for example. So it sounds like there's different stages that are predefined at which you're going to switch from AI model to wet lab, and then back to AI model and wet lab. That's iterative. Is that a fair summary?
That's a fair summary. And eventually where we're headed with this is that the de novo model and the lead optimization model, those are going to be one model where you can actually pick the epitope that you want, have the affinity and the developability and manufacturability, and you're only having to do essentially that initial round of screening, and you can then go directly into animal testing, or your preclinical GLP tox studies. But we're not there yet. But as we curate more and more data, and I think that's the exciting part, like with these partnerships that we have with large pharma, our own internal pipeline, we're continuously adding more data to these models, increasing the overall accuracy, and eventually we will have a foundation model that will span both for epitope, affinity, and the developability. And I think that's really exciting. And kind of just to go back to so why should anybody care about this? Well, what this is enabling is one, new novel biology to be discovered. You can go after GPCRs, ion channels, these difficult to drug targets that have been I would say low hanging fruit for the industry, because it's known biology. They've just been very difficult to drug. So you can unlock that new novel biology. You're able to also dramatically decrease the time. So we applied this de novo model to our TL1A asset, and we were able to, in a 14-month time frame, generate a drug candidate. We'll be in the clinic early next year, and from start to finish on an IND, it took us 24 months, and we'll be in the clinic with a total investment of $13 to $15 million. Now, this compares to, traditionally it takes 4 to 6 years to get into the clinic, and you're talking a $50 to $100 million investment. So we're dramatically shaving off the investment cost per asset, and also being able to drive these assets into the clinic faster, with the likelihood of them being more successful in the clinic, because you're opening up new novel biology. And so this is the really exciting new paradigm of biotech that AI is truly enabling.
That's incredible. So the implications are pretty massive, right? For AbSci as well as for the industry, that you're able to accelerate the development process as well as increase the improvements in drugs each time you develop them.
Absolutely. And ultimately, as these AI models get more and more predictive, the timeline to get to an IND is going to continually shrink, and the overall costs are going to shrink. And I truly believe that this is what is going to unlock personalized medicine, 8 to 10 years from now. Now, obviously, in order to enable that, regulations and FDA, have to obviously, change. But if you can start going after smaller and smaller patient populations, eventually you're going to get to the point where you could take a patient sample, find the target that's relevant for that particular disease, and then design the biologic or drug to treat that individual. But I think that the economics are definitely going to support that in the future, and I think that's really what's exciting about this, and that's what ultimately I think it revolutionizes healthcare at the end of the day.
That's a fascinating implication that with the speed and lower cost of this approach, that you'd be able to pursue, it sounds like even patient populations that are as small as one person with one disease, but let's just say smaller populations with, let's say 250 people with a rare disease or a rare cancer, that you have an optimized approach, um, almost similar to the way that cell therapies work, that you'd be able to have a targeted therapy for a small group of patients even. And because you could do this quickly and affordably, we're talking 10 years in the future, but if you could
Yeah.
do it so fast and so affordably, you would be able to treat these hard to treat rare disease patient populations.
Yeah, and actually make money doing it, because right now it's too expensive to go after a patient population of 200 individuals. You're just not going to make the money if you're having to invest $100 million to get a drug into the clinic, and then over $1 billion once you're in the clinic. But if you can actually now, let's say, fast forward a couple of years from now, instead of a 13 to $15 million investment to get into the clinic, let's say you're down to $5 to $8 million, and it takes you not 24 months, but you're more like 12 to 18 months. These ultra rare diseases, are actually, you're actually able to go and pursue those, and treat those individuals, and actually have the economics work out at the end of the day. And I think that that's super, super exciting. And you can see from there how that can then translate into an individual patient, way in the distant future. But I think, again, focus on these ultra small populations is going to kind of be that first step.
And those patients often have very high, what we call an industry unmet needs for those not in industry, just severe mortality, potentially severe symptoms that impact their lives. So these patient populations are not well addressed with current therapies. This would be an approach to um, help treat those patients' diseases more quickly and effectively in the future.
Absolutely. And the FDA too, in terms of the rare diseases, I think there's already, I think, well established pathways to easily navigate through the FDA on that. And so I think like there's an exciting opening in rare diseases that I think will be opened up in a way that hasn't previously.
And the implications for patients are huge. Taking a little bit of a pivot here, more to the softer side, want to get an understanding of what mentors were influential along your journey, either before you joined biotech or while you've been at AbSci.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of three individuals come to mind. First was my dad. He actually really encouraged me to pursue the idea that I had originally, and I remember distinctly, talking to him about, hey, I want to graduate a year early and pursue this business, and he was 100% all in. And I remember distinctly sitting around the kitchen table with him, and him asking, like, okay, so if we're going to do this, like, what equipment do you need? Where are we going to get the wet lab? And we ended up, I think, putting $50,000 of used lab equipment on his credit card. And I remember asking him when we IPO'd, I was like, did you actually think that this was actually going to work out? Like, and he's like, Sean, he's like, I had no idea whether or not, AbSci was going to work out, but I knew that it was important for you to go pursue this and see this vision through. And whether or not you succeeded through this, you're going to learn a lot of valuable lessons. And he's like, that's really what I wanted from you, is to be able to learn those lessons and be able to support you on this. And my dad is, he's the business he's in is managing a circuit board assembly company, and he is the president of it. And I remember distinctly he had the opportunity to buy that company at one point in time, and he ended up not doing it. And I think he regretted that his kind of the rest of his life, and wanted me not to go down that path and take the risk and pursue something here. So I think my dad has just kind of been very inspirational in that way to me, and I know that I'm very lucky to have a father that has supported me the way that he has. And then the second mentor, who's actually now our CFO, is Zach Jonason. So Zach was previously the founder of Phoenix Venture Partners, a Bay Area VC. They ended up leading our Series A round, and prior to leading the Series A, I ended up getting introduced to Zach, and him and I really hit it off. And I saw that he had a lot that he could mentor me in just navigating this industry. I mean, it wasn't an industry that I had a lot of connections into, and I had no idea on like kind of business terms on how to license this type of technology, kind of the business model. And I remember him telling me, hey, if you need anything, just pick up the phone and call. And I saw that as an open invitation. And I probably annoyed him more than he was hoping for. But I mean, it was kind of just I took it as a big opening, and essentially asked him a bunch of questions, got his thoughts on things, used him as kind of a thought partner early on, and that relationship ended up kind of leading into the Series A investment. He joined the board. I think he really kind of showed me the ropes of like what it meant to be a venture-backed CEO, and him and I just built a really strong relationship. And actually, post IPO, a couple of years after the IPO, him and I were talking, and the kind of the vision of AbSci and where we're going, and he's like, Sean, I would absolutely love to continue to build this thing with you in an operational role. And he ended up stepping off the board, left Phoenix Venture Partners, and came on as our CFO and CBO. And yeah, couldn't be more excited. I mean, to have Zach on board. But I mean, he was one of those early mentors, and to be working with him in an operational role is something I would have never dreamed of. And it's incredible to have him a part of the team, and to continue to kind of grow the future of AbSci together. And then the last mentor, and she's my current mentor, is Sandy Peterson. She's the current independent lead director at Microsoft. She was at J&J, Bayer, and she has just been an absolute amazing mentor for myself, and actually really understands this intersection of AI and biology, and has really helped coach me in helping me continue to grow AbSci, helping kind of think through the vision where we're headed. And yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, these individuals, I mean, have been, really critical in my path. And I think one advice that I would give to, entrepreneurs that are looking to get started is find those mentors, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I think we sometimes get nervous on asking for help, whether that's like introductions or bouncing ideas off of just go out and ask, and don't be afraid of someone telling you no. You're going to get a lot of no's, but just continue to ask, and ultimately that's how doors open up. And I've always found that people are willing and excited to help the eager entrepreneurs, and so yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, I've asked for a ton of help over the years, and it's definitely paid off, and it's led to a lot of amazing mentors in my life.
there's this stereotype of the lone wolf CEO, and I think your three mentors really prove out that that's not the case for you, and that um, in pivotal moments that they were there helping you all along the way, whether it's your dad giving you resources to help found the company to the Series A raise and beyond. So it's a very important, it sounds like, to have people in your life who are willing to lend you a hand when you need it, but it also sounds like they're willing to push you ahead on your journey as well and help you refine your vision and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to have mentors that support you, but then help you think uh, think through things that from different angles and different points of view, and really hold you accountable on certain items. And I think that that's really important. And I think it's also, you have to kind of learn as well, like when to trust your intuition and when to take the advice from a mentor. And I think that also is kind of a skill set, is like you also have to like know when to be grounded in your own intuition. Say, I respect your view on this, but I'm going to go in this direction, and really own that and be courageous. Like your business better than anybody else, and your mentors are there to help you think through all the different kind of possibilities that could arise in a particular scenario. But it's ultimately your call, and you have to own that, and you have to be courageous in it. And that's one thing too that's I've learned, is your intuition is a very, very powerful thing. I feel like almost I can say almost 100% of the time when I have gone against my intuition, but it logically made sense and everyone was telling me to go in this direction or to make this decision, but I knew in my gut it was not the right decision. It ended up not being the right decision. I was like kicking myself because I should have taken the contrarian view, which was my intuition, and been courageous in that decision. I think it was like some of it is like it's hard when you go against the grain, when you go against the advice from your team, from your board, and you're kind of going in uncharted territories, but it's the right thing. You got to trust yourself. You got to trust yourself and be courageous and take the risk, because there's no formula for success. At the end of the day, there's so many different ways to end up at the same point, that again, you got to trust that intuition. You got to be courageous and own those decisions.
And to that point, I think there's been some leadership research stating that having contrarian views on your team, even if you end up not taking them, makes for a more robust answer, and that you get a better understanding of the key risks of any given decision. So sounds like you've experienced that yourself, that having contrarian views on a team is critical to making informed decisions. And sometimes as a leader, you're going to have to take that contrarian view and actually execute on that position.
100%. And the leadership team that I have built, I think, has done a phenomenal job at this. I think first is we all have trust in one another. You have to have that layer of trust. Once you have that layer of trust and you all are doing this for AbSci, to make AbSci successful, you can have these robust dialogues on, and have these different points of view that come up, and really wrestle with things and be like, I could come into a situation and know 90% of the information, but there's this 10% that my team brings up that really makes me rethink, like, okay, is this the right decision? And I think you need those robust dialogues where there is conflict. It's good to have conflict. It's good to wrestle with these ideas, and ultimately none of this conflict is personal. It's to ultimately get to the right decision. And then when you make a decision, what I found is super critical is that we all have to commit to it. we either agree and commit or we disagree and commit, but there's a commitment, and then we roll that out, whatever the decision is. But again, you got to have those robust discussions to get to the best solution.
That's an interesting perspective too, that you can agree and commit or disagree and commit. Either way, you commit to the path forward. I can imagine that if you have someone disagree and then not commit, that could be one of the more challenging scenarios that you face. And I know that AbSci has made some pretty substantial pivots in the past. And has that ever been an issue where someone has not committed to the path, and have there ever been issues with that? Or does it seem like most of the time you're able to get the disagree and commit situation?
Yeah. No, I've had it where there has been disagreement and there has not been the commitment, and it has culturally been like very disruptive, because at your executive team you agree on something, but then you have someone from the team that then is going out and saying like, I didn't support this, and we should have been going in a different direction, and that creates a lot of tension. It breaks trust, and you kind of circle back of okay, well, why are these certain scenarios like arising, and like why aren't people committing? And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the trust. You have to have that underlying, like, trust is the kind of that foundation of a high performing team, and we have to trust each other. We have to know that we all have each other's backs, and we have the best interest for each other. And if you don't have that, you can have people that say they commit to something, but then in action they ultimately don't, and that can just be extremely disruptive. And we've seen that at AbSci, and that's why I making sure that you have the right team dynamics, the right executive team in place is just, it's critically important. And again, it's building that trust, it's being vulnerable with each other, and being able to support each other, and know that we're going to have each other's back through thick and thin.
Yeah, and that absolutely makes sense. Related to this and making big decisions and having a coordinated team, I know that AbSci was originally focused as a SynBio company, which you touched on at the beginning of our conversation. And now you're squarely focused on generative AI within antibodies. So it'd be helpful, I think, for our audience to know how that pivot was made and any key decisions you made along the way. And if this connects back to the disagree and commit discussion, that'd be super helpful to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was right around the time transformers were taking off at Google. 2017, 2018 is when I had this kind of original idea of like, look, if we could take the scalable wet lab technology, we had built the SynBio technology, where we're able to look at millions of protein interaction data, essentially how antibodies bind to a particular target of interest, and we could combine that with generative AI. You could go from this paradigm of searching for a needle to actually creating the needle. And the interesting part about all of it too is that no matter how much I scaled my wet lab screening capabilities, there's no way that I could ultimately search the whole search space. Because if you look at an antibody, there's more sequence variants in an antibody than there are atoms in the universe. And so if you essentially could pair the wet lab data with generative AI, you could build this foundation model where you could have a model that could have a design antibodies in a zero shot manner, where the model got generalizable enough where it could actually search outside the training set to come up with new novel solutions. And that kind of set us off on, okay, how do we integrate AI? Do we want to build out the team ourselves? Do we want to look for an acquisition? And it was right around 2020 during the pandemic, we ended up getting introduced to Denovium, which was a small AI team, very talented AI researchers, and they had been struggling to increase the overall accuracies of their model because they didn't have the wet lab component, and we didn't we didn't have the AI team, and it was like, okay, well, let's acquire Denovium and kind of plant the flag in the ground, and start the journey of integrating generative AI to become an AI drug creation company. And so we acquired them in 2020, and really spent the last 3.5, 4 years since acquiring them, integrating the AI with the wet lab. And I think along that journey, there's been a lot of highs and lows. And what I've realized is that I can a lot of times get so far ahead on kind of the vision, and I know where things are headed, that sometimes I leave my team behind. And I'm very conscious of that, where it's like, I say something, one time, and it's like, here's where we're going. And then, people are still like, whoa, but we were a SynBio company. Like, what does this mean for, us? Is AI now more important than the wet lab scientists? If you design a drug at a click of a button, does that mean I no longer have a job? And I think there's kind of all these like concerns that started to arise. And, it took, kind of a slap in my face to, from some folks that were like, Sean, what is going on? This, like, there's a lot of pivoting, there's a lot going on. The biotech markets, like, crashing, like, things are kind of in disarray. And we really, I think did a really good job of sitting down the whole company, being like, look, here's where we're going. You all have a critical role to play here. It's both the wet lab as well as the AI are critically important. Like, we can't see this vision through without everyone. Like, we need the data. The data is critically important, and it's everyone in the wet lab and all the SynBio scientists that are going to generate this. And instead of developing cell lines, we're generating data for training purposes and validation purposes. And so it was it really took a concerted effort to get everyone on the same page, rowing in the same direction. Because at the end of the day, like, humans hate change. I live in change every single day. And in particular, scientists like don't like change, especially when it's like unknown. Like, I can live in the unknown every day, I think, and I can take a lot of pain, and I can persevere quite a bit. But in general, like, folks, need to be brought along, and I think that was an important like lesson that I learned, was like, when if you're going to make a big pivot, you got to really put in the effort to bring people along, and to assure them, like, here's the strategy, here's what it's going, and then just continue to kind of beat them over the head with it. Like, say it over and over. Here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing. And now we're to the place where it's like I like to say we're multilingual. Like, our AI scientists can speak, the biology, the biologists and SynBio can speak the AI language. We're so intertwined and integrated that it's like it's one team, one finish line now. And it took 4 years to get there, but I think that's one of the keys, to our success. And one of the things that's going to allow us to stay ahead is that seamless integration between the AI and the wet lab. And we're all kind of rowing in the same direction now. But it's it does take time to kind of steer the ship in the right direction. But now where we're at, I mean, it's just, I mean, it truly is beautiful on just that integration between the AI and the wet lab. And ultimately, that's what's led to our success, and is going to continue to forge our success ahead.
It's interesting that your vision was a bit ahead of where your team was, and how it sounds like it took years really to get to a point where the team is fully executing on the vision and was brought along. So it sounds like that was a pretty challenging transition, but it sounds like you took the time to speak to your team members, get them on board with the vision, and make sure that everyone fully understood where you were headed. And bumps in the road sound like they happened, but at the end of the day, you were able to get everyone seamlessly working together, and also that it's a unique competitive advantage for AbSci.
Yeah, absolutely. You've yeah, as the founder CEO, especially if you're a visionary, you can definitely get far ahead of the team. And again, it's really important to bring the team along, and not just your executive team, but like the whole organization. And it's like meeting with each team, and you know, and a lot of times it's you want to rely on your team to communicate the message down, but for really big important things, it's good for you as a as the CEO to sit down and really walk through questions, concerns, reiterate kind of the messaging on where we're going, and again, kind of bringing them along. I think is a really important thing, especially when you're making a hard pivot in overall strategy and direction of the company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for someone who's considering a founder's path and dealing with the types of challenges that we're talking about, what advice would you give them?
There's a lot of different advice that I would give. The biggest advice I would give is, if you're going to become an entrepreneur and you want to found a company, you have to really be able to increase your pain threshold, because there is a lot of pain that's along the way. There's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of ways of, I have no idea how the hell we're gonna like figure this out, or how we're gonna get through this. And there, I like to say sometimes you just have to will it into existence. And there is always a solution out there. I think a lot of times people will get in their heads and like, oh, this is impossible. It's like, well, there may be a small probability that you succeed, but there's still a probability that that this is going to work out. You just have to figure out the solution. And it's and so much of, I think, the success that we've had at AbSci, and why we're still here, is that we take it a day at a time. It's like, what are the biggest problems that we have to solve today, and get those problems solved, and wake up the next morning doing the same thing. It's literally just waking up every day and solving the day's problem, and having that resilience, and not giving up. And I think that's been huge to our success. I mean, obviously you have to have all the other pieces in place that every MBA student will learn, but there is that resilience, that grit, that just that executing on a day-to-day basis is what will lead to the ultimate success.
That's a challenging one, right? Increasing
Yeah,
your pain threshold. But I think that that's advice that can stand the test of time, truly, because um, anyone pursuing the entrepreneurial journey knows there's going to be ups and downs. You may pivot your entire company, like you described. Um, and there's a lot of unique challenges that come with that. And I think you also said this earlier as well, is that there's no formula for success. It's never going to be a playbook that you follow word for word. There may be some precedents, but you're going to have to think on the fly and be creative in order to succeed.
absolutely.
Last question towards the end here. How have you balanced incorporating hobbies into your life, and family, with like you mentioned, a lot of sleepless nights, an extraordinarily demanding career? How do you put it all together and enjoy your time outside of work. Classically, it's work-life balance. We've heard of other terms like work-life harmonization. There's a lot of words for it, but you have your work tasks and you have, hanging out with friends, spending time with family, enjoying a hobby. How did you incorporate all those into your life?
Yeah, I hate the word work-life balance because for me, and I'm doing what I do because I absolutely love it. I believe that this is going to change and revolutionize healthcare, and it's going to leave the world a better place than when I came into it. And to me, that's what gets me up every single day is that impact that AbSci can have on patients' lives and have on this world on a whole. And that's why I've continued to do what I do, and to make sure that like I stay mentally sane and I'm mentally healthy, and I can have time with family. Is that you have to be intentional with it. I've found that I can get lost in my work, and friendships can kind of ebb and flow in terms of how much contact I have with them. But as of recently, I've I've just had to be intentional and intentional about taking time off, and focusing on things that I really do love. I mean, I actually just recently took a week-long trip to Morocco, and what really inspired me to go to Morocco is just the creativity that is seen in the Moroccan culture in terms of the beautiful like tiles that they do, and the woodwork, and the just the beautiful tapestry that they have there. It kind of it inspires it really inspired me, and being able to go there and see that and kind of spark new ideas for AbSci, and where I wanted to kind of take AbSci. And it was like being able to indulge myself in that kind of creativity, and seeing kind of that beautiful culture. I think just helps center me, but I have to be intentional about going off and doing that. And just putting it in the books, and saying I'm going to go do it. And this trip, actually, I really tried to stay away from email, and I had a few things that I kind of were on my mind that I wanted to really flush out, that were important to kind of to AbSci's future. And I think that I was able to do that effectively by being intentional, taking that time off. And I love traveling. I love art. I love seeing the different ways that different cultures express creativity. It really inspires me, and so that's how I have incorporated in kind of the things that I love, that help me become a better person, help me become a better CEO, and a better friend, and family member.
Awesome. We'll close on that. Being intentional with your time outside of work and using it to re-energize and reinvigorate yourself. Sean, really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. This has been a ton of fun.